What is up, SuperFlex, Super Friends, on a Super Friday night? Football going on right now, by the way, NFL football. That doesn't happen very often on a Friday, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on the Chiefs and the Vikings, but I'm here to talk SuperFlex with all of you because, man, we're getting dangerously close to the start of this season. And we've got quarterback competitions have been decided across the league. I think there's still Captain Redbeard AJ Gardner's here behind the glass for me. By the way, do we know his New England named a starter yet? I think that's the only one we're waiting on at this point, right?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
That's the only one, and that one feels like the least up for grabs, among Cam and Mac and Cam. So we've got here in Denver, Colorado, we've got a new QB1. His name's Teddy Two Gloves, Teddy Bridgewater. I know that a lot of fantasy players are not happy about that. We can talk about that one. What else? We just had Jameis Winston. I was wrong about both of these, by the way. I got to point that out. I misread both of those situations. I was sure Denver was going to go with Drew Lock. And maybe I spent too much time in the old echo chamber hearing about upside, as if that matters to NFL teams who has a higher ceiling. Like that's a fantasy football theme, by the way. So. Drew Lock's upside, quote unquote upside, that wasn't gonna, it didn't do anything for him to win that, to try and get that job here in Denver. I also misread the Saints thing, their quarterback competition when Michael Thomas went down and, Adam Troutman started dealing with injuries and, it's just kind of like, who's going to catch the ball there? It was like, man, I don't know that they're going to go with the guy who stands in the pocket and throws the ball if there's nobody to catch him. I think that that's where the playmaking ability of Taysom Hill brings that extra wrinkle to that offense. I think that's what you want. That's what I've been saying for this is episode 7, so 6 episodes now. That was my prediction. Lo and behold, it's Jameis Winston is going to be the starter over Taysom Hill. And they're still going to throw the ball. They're going to turn and hand off Dalvin Kamara, and they're going to throw the ball down the field. And, I'll be honest, I think that this isn't even a hot take. I'm kind of setting it up like it's going to be spicy. It's not. The reality is, for fantasy purposes, all of our New Orleans Saints are better off with Jameis Winston, except for Taysom Hill. Rip. What else do we got? Chicago named a starter. It's Andy Dalton. How long is that going to last? Is he going to make it a full game? We'll see. We'll freaking see. And Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. We kind of talked about that one last week. Bye week is week 6. That seems like a pretty easy transition to Trey Lance, unless San Francisco is just absolutely rolling with Jimmy Garoppolo. But it's a tough division. It's not the greatest schedule to start the season, and I would not be surprised at all to see a 2-3, 3-2, something like that San Francisco team switch to Trey Lance during the bye. So, yeah, we can talk about that stuff. We can talk about ADP, AJ McMahon. Sorry, AJ, you might have to tell me how to pronounce that. Is it
McMahon?
There you go.
McMahon.
He's here every week talking SuperFlex with us. We need to get this right. This is important. You're an integral part of this conversation, AJ. But yeah, thanks for the show.
Got a great name on top of
it. Yeah, the other AJ, the captain. We've got another one there. Yeah, thanks for being here, AJ. I always appreciate it, man. Dylan is here too. Hey, John, my dynasty team was finally ready to compete this year. My top 2 running backs are Akers and Etienne. Oh, man. I'm here for moral support. Yeah, man. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. Here's something, and I actually just tweeted this out today. I mean, this is going to be a little bit salt in the wounds, I think, and I apologize for that, Dylan. But I think this is a really important point for something, something for people to kind of keep in mind here. But I tweeted this today, and I've said it before too. With the right roster build, the names on the roster don't matter. It just doesn't matter. And if you've got enough running backs, you might struggle a little bit in week 1 without those guys. I imagine you were planning on having those guys, in week 1 as likely starters at the running back positions. You were probably going to be looking for some other options within the first month of the season anyways. Just for some depth, it wouldn't have necessarily been, like all of a sudden I don't have either of these guys. Like that wasn't a slam dunk to happen at any point. But I do think that you were going to be looking for more running backs, partly to fill flex spots and partly, to deal with potential injuries and any kind of setback for Akers and Etienne. I think that you were going to be dealing with that anyways. So, I think that I don't think that this is quite as catastrophic as it probably feels. How about that? How's that for some moral support, Dylan? I think that I think that it's a small setback early in the season, but I think that you're going to get this right back on track. Just because just the nature of the running back position is you were going to be looking for more of them anyways. If you don't already have them, you were going to be on the waivers looking for some. So, yeah, I think you're going to bounce back, but man, that's a tough break. Yeah, sorry to hear that. Brad's Crypto, would you trade Josh Jacobs and Leviska Chennault for Damien Harrison, Jacoby Myers? And I think, man, it's a tough one only because Damien Harris is one of my favorites. But you know what? At the end of the day, I couldn't do it. I really like Damien Harris this year. So there's 2 problems here. First of all, you're giving up a lot of value there. Josh Jacobs he's got a higher ADP. I think he's probably higher by I won't say a significant margin, but he's got more value on the trade analyzer. And I think Leviska Chennault, same thing over Jacoby Myers. So I think that you're kind of losing that trade twice in terms of value. That's not the end of the world. I don't mind that part. Here's the more damning piece to me is I despise having both the running game and a piece of the passing game from one NFL offense in the same lineup. I mean, it's got to be a crazy explosive offense for that to work. And I don't think that New England's going to be there for one thing, but they just kind of cap each other's upside. Like if Damien Harris scores a touchdown, he breaks on a long scoring run. That's one less opportunity for Jacoby Myers, and vice versa. If Jacoby Myers catches a short touchdown pass, that could have gone to Damien Harris, and now that's a missed opportunity for Damien Harris to get you fantasy points. So they just kind of cannibalize each other in your lineup at the same time. So, to me, you don't want to stack the running game and the passing game from the same offense. Back to Dylan. Do you think Teddy is a sell in Dynasty now that he has a starting job, maybe temporarily? If so, what's he worth? I could see selling him. I don't think that you have to necessarily. So here's the thing. I've been saying all along. I got it wrong. I thought that it would be Drew Lock, and it was just the basically the day before this thing was announced. I was talking to a friend of mine here in Denver who's a Broncos insider. And he was telling me, he was like, come watch practice someday, man. You're going to see that there's a massive difference between those two. It's hard to tell on game day. And even when it is obvious that Drew doesn't have a grasp on the offense, and just what it means to play quarterback at the pro level, like that still shows up on game day. You can still see it sometimes. Some of the issues that he had, it was completely on him. It was bad reads. It was, audibling into bad protections, things like that. He just doesn't get it. He can't read a defense. He still can't. 3 years later, he still can't do it. But he was saying, but come watch practice and you're going to see it's night and day. Teddy is just running away with this thing. It's to a point where Drew Lock is trying to do the things that Teddy Bridgewater does so that he can stay step for step. So like this quarterback competition wasn't nearly as close as we think. Just because it took a while to make that announcement, this thing was a blowout. And it kind of blows my mind that I was that far off, thinking that Drew Lock was still going to get the start, despite the fact that, Teddy Bridgewater was just running circles around him in camp. But what I do stand by is that I think you want both of them. I think they're both going to end up getting some starts. And, I think that if you already have Teddy, you're kind of halfway already to putting that combo together so that you've got that continuation of the Broncos quarterback position for the entire season. And, I think there's some value in that. I think there's some value in having, half of that job already on your roster. So, for that reason, I think that I would probably stick with Teddy, and I would actually take advantage of the value decrease for Drew Lock and try and go get him, try and put them together. I think that's the way I would approach that. But if you've got quarterback depth to spare, the other thing that you could always do is target the guy the person who has Drew Lock and was really kind of planning on them being part of their quarterback, him being part of their quarterback rotation, and, go get a haul for Teddy Bridgewater. So I always say, to me, it takes a first round rookie pick, or at least that type of value, to get any starting quarterback, any NFL starting quarterback in a SuperFlex league should cost a random first round rookie pick from the following year. So, we don't know where these rookie picks are going to land. We don't know who's going to be drafting 101. We don't know who's going to be drafting 112. I always kind of cheat towards the back end, especially if I'm giving away points. If I'm giving up Teddy Bridgewater, whoever I'm sending them to is going to get his fantasy points, at least something. Like even if he starts for them once, that's still, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12, 15, as high as, 20, 25 points. They're going to get that out of him. He's going to help them win that game and make that a later pick. Whereas I'm getting back that draft pick and I'm not getting any 20, 21 points out of it. I have to wait till 2022 to make that pick. So, I'm giving up production that's making that a later pick. So, for that reason, I like to cheat towards the back half of the draft when I'm giving up a player for a pick. And at that point in the rookie draft, it's just, you don't have a way to replace quarterbacks. One of the hardest things to do in SuperFlex is to increase your head count at quarterback, and to go from, to turn one quarterback into two. You can go straight across quarterback for quarterback all day, every day. That's a great move to make. In fact, it's great to tier it down, but to add a quarterback without getting one in return is really hard to do, and it costs a significant amount of value. Yeah. So Teddy is his quarterback 5 behind Justin Fields, Tua, Mac Jones, and Matt Ryan. So part of the problem there, quarterback QBX. That's right. Quarterback extreme. Part of the problem is Mac Jones. I mean, it sounds like Mac Jones has a decent chance to start here in 2021, but I mean, I still think that ultimately that's going to be Cam Newton. And I've said before, I kind of think that if Cam Newton wins this job, I think he's probably keeping it most of the season, just because you really just kind of change the entire. I don't really have a timetable for that, Belichick said. I mean, it was such a Belichick answer. Like, it wasn't even like, that makes it sound like he's just like thinking hard about it. That quote. I don't really have a timetable for that. Yeah, it was just that same deadpan, like, laziness. He always.
Is it his smoke screen, or does he really not know?
Yeah, he knows. He always knows. He's known for years. He's known before Mac Jones was even on the roster who was going to be the starter between Mac and Cam. But yeah, so to me, though, you name Cam Newton a starter, it's going to be really hard to transition to Mac Jones. They're so different. They're diametrically opposed as quarterbacks, to a point where you're learning a whole new offense if you switch to Mac Jones. So I don't think that we're going to see Mac Jones for a while. That's my only concern there, Dylan. I kind of think that now we're waiting on Justin Fields too. When does he finally get the start? Like I said, I mean, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, to a point where, like, I mean, where do you set? I'm going to put it out there to you guys in the chat. Like, where do you set the over under on Justin Fields finally taking over as a starter? Like, where could I set the over under where you're actually going to take that bet? Like, I think it's going to be pretty early, right? But point being, though, I mean, for the first week, maybe 2 weeks, the first few weeks of the season, without Teddy, you're going to be down to Tua and Matt Ryan. If one of them were to get hurt early in the season, before Justin Fields gets on the field, before Mac Jones gets on the field, you would be down to you would be down to one quarterback, whichever of the two is still healthy and available. So it gets a little gloom and doom for me, but it's just because I get so anxious. Like, it kind of wakes me up at night thinking about not having enough quarterbacks. That's part of why I go 5. Like, I mean, here we are talking about, Justin Fields isn't a starter yet. Mac Jones isn't a starter yet. Teddy Bridgewater isn't a long-term starter, but you've got 5 of them. And that's kind of what it took for us to make sure that you've got 2 at all times, unless something just goes completely off the rails and you lose, both Tua and Matt Ryan early in the season. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely have a scarcity mindset when it comes to quarterbacks at all times. I'm that way from the first pick of the startup all the way through the life of the dynasty league, just because, it's so hard to replace them when you don't have them. And, it freaks me out, man. Just thinking about not being able to start one at SuperFlex, just because, one of them's hurt and the other ones, we're still waiting for them to get a starting job. So there are a lot of people who are a little bit more bold than I am, not nearly as it doesn't compel them nearly as much, those what ifs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I look at that and I'm just kind of like, man, Teddy is not available in my league. If I've got that group of quarterbacks, Teddy's not available until Justin Fields becomes starter. But I mean, if you can get another quarterback in return, I think that you'd be fine. Here's a scenario. I wonder if you could get Andy Dalton. Teddy Bridgewater plus should easily get you Teddy Bridgewater should easily get you Andy Dalton plus. That's better. And I would feel good about that because then you've got Andy Dalton until, Justin Fields is ready. Not that I want to start Andy Dalton, but in a pinch, if Tua or Matt Ryan got hurt, I think that you'd be in pretty good shape still. You'd still have Andy Dalton with his, his floor that's okay. Very low ceiling, but the floor is fine. He's still going to get you somewhere around that 10, 12 points a game pretty easily. So that could be the move, man. That could be the move, Dylan, is to see about sending Teddy and getting back Andy Dalton, just so that you've got that continuation of the Bears job, kind of the same way that we're talking about with Bridgewater and Locke. All right, I can't read that, man, but
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I don't know if it's working out for you guys, but we're trying this out.
Yeah,
so
just take
right now, the Dynasty League Football Trade Analyzer has Teddy Bridgewater trade valued at 63.2 and Andy Dalton at 19. So I don't know if this has been updated since the starting news has been announced, but that's where they were going.
Yeah.
And DLF suggests that you add a player in the range of, you can, on the Andy Dalton side, you could get something like a Logan Thomas, AJ Dillon, Mike Williams, Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, Drew Lock. So those are the range guys that they were looking to pair. I don't think you're going to get Drew Lock and Andy Dalton for Teddy, but
no. Yeah, that's where that thing's kind of funny. It's really just based on the actual values, but like you put that into, you think about that in real life, and it's just like, man, like, first of all, what would even be the point of that? What would be the point of trading Teddy Bridgewater and getting back his backup? But yeah, it's just it's a funny scenario, but yeah, I mean the point being, and like you said, it probably hasn't fully been updated yet, but I would guess that that's not going to be too far off, even when it does get updated, with Andy Dalton as the quote unquote starter for Chicago. I like the ADP is not going to go up, very much at all, because I think SuperFlex players are doing the exact same thing that we're talking about and saying, what, these guys, this is going to be a very short-term scenario here. This is going to be a very short-term proposition with, Andy Dalton. I mean, again, I'm curious what you guys think for the over-under, but I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 games. Like, if you set the over-under at 4 games with Andy Dalton as a starter for the Bears, I'm taking the under.
I mean, they opened the season against the Rams, the Bengals, and the Browns. So you definitely have 2 good defenses right off the bat.
Yeah. Some pass rushes.
And they can get after the quarterback.
That's the big thing. That's the key right there. That's the key when you've got, man, why am I drawing
Clowney and Garrett?
Yeah, Garrett. That's Myles Garrett. That's what I was thinking of. And then Clowney, of course. You've got Aaron Donald. Those guys coming after Andy Dalton, the statue of Andy Dalton. The need to have Justin Fields on the field is going to be so apparent from the jump, honestly. Yeah. It's almost like, why don't you platoon these guys? You know, like to start, like does Andy Dalton really give you the better chance to win week 1 against the Rams? Like knowing what that pass rush can do? Is that honestly the position that we're going to take here? We're going to say Andy Dalton gives us a better chance against Aaron Donald than Justin Fields.
I was just here to make sure we called out Aaron Darnold because we did not need to overskip him for Garrett and Clowney.
Yeah.
Aaron Darnold, shout out. Best D-line.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, yeah, it's going to be painfully obvious very early that it needs to be Justin Fields as the starter. Yeah, what else do we got? Aaron Thorpe. Anyone you're targeting before the season starts? Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on what position we want to go after, because like I said, so to me, it like this is a very, back to something that I've said, the last few shows, I believe, but I'm very strategy based. I'm not a huge believer in, you have to get this guy. Like I do rankings at DLF, but to me, I also tier them because to me, I think that tiers are way more useful than rankings. Rankings makes it feel like I have to get this guy, and the only guy I feel that way about is Pat Mahomes. I think that, you're just as well off with, Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey or now Alvin Kamara as you are, I said Christian McCaffrey in there, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, guys like that. I think you're just as well off with those guys as Christian McCaffrey, So like putting all of them into a tier together and saying any one of these guys is going to do roughly the same thing. I think that that's more useful to you than me saying, this is the guy that I like the best out of that group. I still like Christian McCaffrey the best of that top running back tier, but I don't think that he's going to be that much better than, Kamara, Barkley, Taylor, guys like that, and a few others. So, and again, like I said at the top, to me, above all else, I don't think the names matter. I think that the roster construction is the important part. So, I think that we can still kind of target some specific names. And I think that if you have guys that you want, go get them. I think that you're going to manage a roster better if you've got the guys that you've already pinpointed, that you've already identified. But, at the end of the day, I just think that as long as you're doing the right thing at each position, I think you're going to be fine. But for me, some guys I've kind of been looking at, like I said, I mean, I think that I'm probably a little higher for the season on Saquon Barkley coming off the injury. It's dicey for sure. We always talk about those compensatory injuries coming off of an ACL injury. Jonathan Taylor, he kind of dropped off a little bit just because, we lost Carson Wentz, we lost Quentin Nelson. Well, those guys are back. They're back practicing. This offense is at full health. So we should be right back on Jonathan Taylor as, RB1 overall upside to me. I think Joe Mixon has that upside. I think Austin Eckler has that upside. Kind of some, go down the list a little bit farther. I think Damien Harris, I mentioned him. I think that he's a good, like he's kind of in that running back dead zone that they talk about. I love getting some guys from the running back dead zone. You know what I hear when people say running back dead zone? What I hear is these are guys who are not going to have any value in week 1. They're probably not going to have any value in week 2. That's what I hear. And what I hear is the running back dead zone. Those are the guys that you want later in the season. So don't ignore them. Don't just ignore them because it's the quote unquote dead zone. They're not going to be the guys who are going to, own a huge workload early in the season, because we still need guys who are going to have that same type of role, later in the season. We talk about that every week. I won't go into it too much, but the point being, some of these guys that they're saying in the dead zone, Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, they put kind of in that running back dead zone. And to me, that just means, you don't want to start either of those guys in week 1 because we don't know how that split is going to, how it's going to break out. But if either one of those guys gets hurt, then the other one just takes on a massive workload. I mean, Gio Bernard's still going to be he's going to be involved in the passing game kind of regardless. But all of a sudden, all of the early down work, all the goal line stuff, it all gets funneled to whichever one is still standing. So, man, hammer that running back dead zone. You still want some guys who help you win in week 1 and, early in the season. But don't ignore that dead zone just because they're calling it the dead zone. To me, all that means is that's your second wave and that's your third wave of guys. So, still look at them. Deep sleeper type of guys. And here's something I did, by the way. If you go to DLF, dynastyleaguefootball.com, I have my SuperFlex Dynasty rankings, but I actually identified some 2021 sleepers at several different positions. And I would have to pull that up to find all of them for you. But what I can tell you is I freaking love Chuba Hubbard. I think he's the best pure handcuff in the entire league. Christian McCaffrey kind of has some injuries starting to pile up a little bit. Some of those nagging injuries starting to get to him a little bit. People don't like to hear that, but it happens to every running back. And you just think about what their job is, and it stands to reason that after a while, it's going to start to wear them down. But if he misses any time, I mean, we saw how good Mike Davis was in relief of Christian McCaffrey last year. Chuba Hubbard is he's not the tank that Mike Davis is, but he's a more explosive runner. He's a better pass catcher. He's more elusive. He really kind of brings a lot of what you already have with Christian McCaffrey. Not quite as prolific, but everything that you get from Christian McCaffrey, you just turn it down a notch or two, and you've got Chuba Hubbard. If he gets an opportunity, man, he's gonna do a lot more than keep you afloat. So that's one of my favorites. At the wide receiver position, we've kind of been talking about that the last few weeks as well. But I've kind of been saying those second-year wide receivers are guys that I like a lot. Brian Edwards is probably my favorite, but there's a few of those guys in that same range from that same draft class. You really just kind of like pick one out of a hat. I think that people are way too low on Jalen Reagor at this point too. So there's a couple that I'm definitely targeting, before their breakouts. So, and I mean, we can talk other positions too, at some point, but, kind of get started with that. And like I said, I mean, I actually listed them on, in the comments section of my, SuperFlex rankings. I haven't done an update of the rankings yet, like in a little while. So, take those with a grain of salt, but go down the list and find some SFD's super sleepers or whatever I called it. I don't know, something cheesy. But there's some names there that I'm really trying to get on my rosters before the start of the season. What do we got? Do you think it's okay to try to package Etienne for another running back from a rebuilding team, or is it a bad move to sell low? That's from Dylan. No, I think that you can do that. So you've got Edmonds, Javonte Williams, AJ Dillon, Jamal Jamal Williams. So yeah, it's a decent group already. There's so the problem is like we're kind of hearing it's not as extreme, of course, as Cam Akers trying to come back from the Achilles. We are hearing that it's going to be a little bit of a tough road back for Travis Etienne. It's going to take a while to get back to full power, especially when you're talking about planting with that foot that has the Lisfranc injury. So, I think that we're probably going to be right back on Travis Etienne next season, going into 2022, and I don't think he's going to be there just yet. So, I obviously, the big mantra in fantasy football just across the board is buy low, sell high. I think that you're probably selling a little low with Travis Etienne. I don't think it's quite as low as what we probably think. I think that the value that he's going to return is, in 2022 is probably right around what you're getting here in 2021. So yeah, I think that's a fine move to move on from him. It also kind of depends on, how we're defining rebuild in this case. And this is something I don't remember if I've talked about this one or not. 7 episodes in, and I'm always worried about, am I being too redundant here? Am I saying stuff that I've said in every single one of the previous 36 or 6 episodes? Like, I don't remember for sure, but I have talked about this. The fact that there's kind of 2 different types of rebuild. There's the quick rebuild that you can do on the fly. And I mean, with the running backs that you've got, I mean, I don't know the rest of what the rest of the roster looks like, but that's a decent group of running backs there that you're kind of building around, Dylan, with Javonte Williams. And these are second wave guys. These are kind of running back dead zone type of guys. So, it might be a little tough early in the season to find running back scoring for you, but that's a group of running backs that, as they start to creep into their NFL teams' lineups, as they start to gain more work and carve out a role on their own team, they're going to start, making you more and more competitive. So to a point where that could be a roster, just based on what you've got at running back, that could be a roster that makes a push, to get into the playoffs late in the season, and might have enough momentum to make a deep run once you get there. So, if that's one type of rebuild, right? Is just real quick on the fly. Let's just patch this up, a couple holes, and let's roll. Let's still try and get to the playoffs. The other one is, we call it productive struggle, kind of the term that Ryan McDowell coined, where not totally sure how long this is going to take, kind of planning on it taking a while, though. It's really kind of a burn it to the ground and start all over, tear it down and start over. That type of rebuild, I think that you probably might as well hang on to Travis Etienne. If you're not going to try and compete in 2021, I would hang on to Travis Etienne until next year. And then it's almost like you got a free draft pick out of it. You still get Travis Etienne in his first season. So, but if this is the type of roster that I'm thinking, just looking at those running backs, I think that you can be competitive in 2021. And I think Travis Etienne helps you get some more pieces that help you, get off to a quicker start and be ready to make that late season run. Back to AJ, who are a couple backup quarterbacks not commonly discussed that are strong bench stashes for you? Man, that's a great question. So I always make fun of my friend Sal Stefanelli because he loves Tim Boyle. And I mean, for the longest time, it was like, dude, this is obvious. He's the backup, maybe even the third stringer to Aaron freaking Rodgers. Like, what is the path? I mean, he's kind of been a preseason hero type of guy. Now he's in Detroit. All that's in his way is Jared Goff without any pass catchers. I mean, TJ Hawkinson and kind of DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. But it's a bad, it's not a great offensive line. It's not a particularly good. I mean, it's objectively bad as a group of pass catchers. They don't have a good defense to keep them in games. I don't know. It's not out of the question that Tim Boyle actually gets a chance when that's what he has overcome is Jared Goff with that supporting cast. So that's one that I like a lot. Just in terms of not in terms of opportunity. And unfortunately, like that's what we end up talking about the most. Like, what's the path? What's the opportunity? How does this guy get into his lineup so that we can get him into our lineup? So we end up talking about that a lot. But just in terms of talent, I don't think there's much of an opportunity here. But in terms of talent, to me, Brandon Allen is really kind of on course to be, next generation Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's been uber productive everywhere he's been as a starter. In those spot starts that he actually gets, he's been awesome. And I think that, it's very unlikely that he's going to get in over Joe Burrow. I mean, I don't predict injuries, it makes my soul hurt to try and do that. So I just don't even mess with it. But if Joe Burrow were to get hurt, I think that offense with Brandon Allen would be just a very small downgrade. And I think Brandon Allen would be very startable for you at SuperFlex. So those are a couple of them that kind of come to mind. I would have to think about that otherwise. I don't know that there are a lot of guys who are sneaky vulnerable that we don't really know of. I guess what I would say is, barring injury, of course, I would say, I think Kirk Cousins is a guy who is not necessarily vulnerable, but is very unlikely to be back in Minnesota in 2022. And this is a big if, but if Minnesota's losing a lot of games, if they're not competitive for whatever reason, I mean, it's a playoff roster. There's no reason for this hypothetical scenario. But if hypothetically Minnesota gets off to a really slow start, maybe suffer some injuries, there's definitely a scenario where Kellen Mond gets on the field at some point in 2021. It's not a real likely path, but he at least has a path. There are guys like that. I've said before, I think Davis Mills probably at some point gets a chance in Houston. Yeah, who else is even vulnerable that they don't have somebody already? Here's another one that I hate to say it, but I say it all the time. Because we don't want to admit it, but the reality is, if you're looking at the guys who could be vulnerable if they're not winning games, Ryan Fitzpatrick could be vulnerable. Now, Washington also should have a playoff roster. Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't have the greatest track record as an NFL starter. I think he's losing at a clip of about 2.5 to 1 as an NFL starter. So he's so fun for fantasy purposes, But if he's not winning games for them, which he usually doesn't, I think that there's a very good chance that you see Taylor Heinicke in 2021. So I think those are the guys. We really kind of want to pinpoint those guys who might be vulnerable and look at their backups. Here's another one. PJ Walker for Carolina. I don't have any reason to believe that Sam Darnold can't hold down that job. PJ Walker, though, is a more explosive playmaker. And, I don't know that
good. He looked good.
He's looked awesome. Like he almost turned that into a quarterback competition. Watch that guy throw on the run. That's one of my favorite things to watch for. I'm not a tape grinder, but when I watch a quarterback who can throw the ball with accuracy and velocity off platform, that's where I'm just like, all right, that guy has it. He needs to be on the field somewhere. If it's not Carolina, it needs to happen somewhere. That's one of my favorite attributes of an NFL quarterback. And PJ Walker is right there. I don't think Carolina is in for a lot of wins. I don't know that means that they're going to be looking to replace Sam Darnold anytime soon. But I think that there's going to be some noise from that fan base. And I think that, PJ Walker would absolutely, if he got into that role, I think that he would be, what we got from Jalen Hurts at the end of the 2020 season, you're going to get that from PJ Walker. You're going to get the rushing. You're going to get the splash plays. You're going to get the big passing numbers, all of it. He's a fantasy points gold mine if we can just get him on the field somewhere. AJ, yes, Andy does give the Bears a better chance to win long-term by starting week 1. Andy gets beat up that week and spares a rookie that defense. I mean, that's a fair point. He's definitely going to get beat up. So under 6 I'd take for Fields. Okay. So you're even more pro Dalton than I am. I was saying 4. I was saying 4 games, I think, is the absolute max for Andy Dalton as a starter in Chicago, but you'll go 6. Okay. That's and it's still not a lot, either way. I think it's coming sooner rather than later. But yeah, there is there's a little bit of, next level philosophy to that, isn't there? To throw Andy Dalton out there when you've got Aaron Donald and you've got Clowney, you've got Myles Garrett. Let those guys beat up on Andy Dalton. Get that out of the way. Get that off of your schedule. And now you switch over to Justin Fields. So the rookie doesn't.
Andy Dalton got hurt. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. He's gonna try and play through it too, because he knows it's kind of his last chance as a starter. So, I mean, he's gonna be like a crash test dummy out there. I think that's a very good point. Yeah, like let him go through that punishment and then get Justin Fields out there. Jeremy C asks, is first next year too much to give up for Elijah Moore in one quarterback PPR dynasty? Currently rebuilding and have 6 future firsts over the next 2 years. No, I don't think that's too much. In one quarterback, absolutely not. I think that, first of all, I think that Elijah Moore probably at this point anyways, like if you were to do your rookie draft in that format right now, without the quarterbacks pushing everybody into the second round, I think that if you did your rookie draft right this moment, Elijah Moore would be a first round pick. So if he's a first round pick in 2020, and I've talked about this before too, to me, the difference between, the time value, so the difference between a 2020 or a 2021 pick and a 2022 pick is almost a full round, So a 2022 first round pick to me only gets you a 2021 second round pick. And the reason for that being just how long you have to wait. And you don't know where that pick is, you don't know where it's going to fall, in the draft order. And you have to wait so long to even find that part out, much less to make the pick. And in that amount of time, not only do we see those draft picks become later ones than what we originally thought, what we originally hoped, we also start to find out who's actually coming out in this draft class. And people are not particularly excited about the 2022 draft class as is. And then when some of those draft eligible juniors end up going back to school and they're going to wait to come out in 2023, that draft class is only going to get worse. And it's just going to diminish the value of that draft pick even more. So, yeah, to me, you're really kind of giving up rookie, second round pick rookie value for Elijah Moore by giving up that future first. So, where I think that he's worth a current first, it probably is, a little bit later in the first round, but I think he's worth a 2021 first. So I would definitely do it for a 2022 first. And Jammin', are you worried about Dalvin Cook's injury history? Yes and no. I'm not more worried about him than I'm worried about, Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. With the injuries that they've come up with. In fact, there's an argument to be made that Christian McCaffrey is a bigger injury risk than Dalvin Cook or Saquon Barkley. And I only bring it up because, Christian McCaffrey had leg injuries and shoulder injuries and chest injuries. There were several different things going on with him, several different injuries. They weren't serious injuries. They weren't season-ending injuries. I mean, they ended up costing him most of the season. But it wasn't just like one catastrophic injury and just shut him down for the entire season, perform surgery on him, spend the whole offseason rehabbing it, and now come back from that one injury event. It was a bunch of different injuries, and he still had surgery in the offseason. But I mean, it was just a bunch of different parts of his body, now have kind of some weak spots, some injury risks, some re-injury risks. Whereas Dalvin Cook, the big thing with Dalvin Cook was it was 2018 when he had the torn ACL, missed the entire season. And then in
2017.
Yeah, there you go.
He tore his ACL in 2017 and he injured his hamstring pretty bad in 18, which is common coming back from an ACL.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's where we're saying compensatory injuries. What ends up happening is, you don't have the full range of motion from that surgically repaired knee. I'm going to talk like a doctor here, by the way. I should be calling it something other than the knee. I don't know what the scientific term for his knee is, but you don't have the full range of motion in that surgically repaired knee. Or you're still kind of skittish about it. Like the idea of planting on turf and pushing off with that knee when that's what made it pop in the first place. It's really hard to get your mind there. It's a really hard thing to push yourself to do. And what ends up happening is you put more of your weight, more of your torque on the other leg that wasn't surgically repaired to compensate for that weakness in that surgically repaired knee. And you end up injuring, soft tissue on the other side of the body, specifically hamstrings, like the captain said. Like that's pretty common coming back from an ACL injury. So to me, the way I kind of look at that is Dalvin Cook shreds the ACL in 2017 and then deals with those compensatory injuries in 2018. To me, that's all one injury. That's all one injury event. The ACL is what caused the hamstring on the other side of the body, So to me, that's all just one big injury all at once. And once everything's kind of rehabbed, everything's cleaned up and fixed, he's been relatively healthy ever since. The thing that does concern me with Dalvin Cook is the amount of usage that he's gotten at this point in his career through, is it 5 seasons, 4 seasons, whatever it's been. He's taken on a pretty big workload over the last couple seasons when he's been healthy, in particular. And I mean, it's a lot of carries. It's a lot of touches that end in violent collisions, so it's just kind of, it's less about a major injury, a major re-injury. I'm not worried about him tearing an ACL. What I am worried about is that much usage starting to just kind of chip away at him, with minor nagging injuries, kind of like what we saw with Christian McCaffrey last year. Christian McCaffrey had stayed healthy throughout his career up until that, that 4th season. And now all of a sudden, all these injuries start cropping up. It feels like it stands to reason that would happen, just because of the damage that his body had taken in the previous 3 seasons, because he was healthy and on the field that whole time. So that's the thing that I'm nervous about that with Dalvin Cook. I'm nervous about that with Ezekiel Elliott. Honestly, I'm getting there with Alvin Kamara. I think that I'm back on him a little bit because I think Jameis Winston is great for Alvin Kamara and for all of the fantasy viable players on the Saints offense, by the way. But it's just been 4 years now of Alvin Kamara getting taking hit after hit, and particularly the last 3 without Mark Ingram in the way. 3. Yeah, the last 3 seasons it's been without Mark Ingram taking on, that workload, particularly on early downs, on running, on the rushing downs. So it's just usage, there's a cliff for running backs, and it's not age, it's usage. The other positions, it really kind of is age. A wide receiver turns 30 and we know that the cliff is coming, just because of, the human body somewhere around 30 years old just starts to slow down a little bit. And, at an increasing rate too. But with running backs, it's not about the age. It's about how many times have they put the football in your hands and asked you to go try and run through a 250-pound linebacker, who, by the way, is coming at you with opposite momentum of yours at just as much, if not more, speed as yours. So, how many times can any human body do that? I'm also a little bit worried about that with Derrick Henry. By the way, I know he's built different. It's just he's been hit a lot of times, and every inch of his body at some point, it's going to break down on him too. So that's what I worry about with those guys. Back to your question. It's not really Dalvin Cook's injury history for me. It's more about the times that he was healthy and what he was doing when he wasn't injured that concerns me. Justin Sullivan, SuperFlexDude. Who are your favorite running backs for the second half of the season? Need that winning running back wave. Man, yeah, that's a good question, and that's something that to me we should all be kind of planning ahead a little bit. The tough part is it's a little hard to predict which ones are going to get injured. Some of them are going to get injured. We just don't know for sure which ones. But if we want to just look at some backups, some handcuffs, some some guys in a committee who were, who could, give up some work to somebody else. We go from a running back split from a running back by committee. One of them gets hurt and the other one's just takes the entire workload by himself. I think that there are a handful of guys like that. And I'll go back to Chuba Hubbard. I'm not going to predict a Christian McCaffrey injury, but if that does happen, to me, Chuba Hubbard is a great second wave guy, or whatever wave that ends up being. Second wave, third wave, whatever it is. If and when he's on the field because Christian McCaffrey is not available, he's going to be a fantasy monster. I believe. I think Quadri Allison is probably that type of guy. More of a second wave guy. So, just to kind of break this down, to me, I think you kind of break it down by 5-week increments. By week 5, I think you're going to see a lot of turnover at the running back position. That's kind of what happens every single season. So we go like week 5, week 10, and week 15 are kind of where the waves kind of end, and so second wave guys, I think it's, kind of in the middle of the season there. I think that's where you see Javonte Williams take over. I think that's where you see Chase Edmonds take over. I think that's where you see, we get some clarity in that Jets backfield. I think, maybe Michael Carter is the type of guy who takes over there. San Francisco, I think that we get some clarity on that one probably. So Trey Sermon probably would be the guy in the second wave. And then, Chuba Hubbard might be more of a third wave type of guy. Quadri Allison probably as well. By then, I think I think the second wave is generally, kind of the cream rising to the top, right? It's the guys, like I said, in those committees who really kind of take over that role, just once and for all. And then that third wave, I think is generally going to be some guys who weren't really part of a committee. Now, all of a sudden, starter's injured, and this guy is your lead back. So Chuba Hubbard, Quadri Allison, maybe Salvin Ahmed. If I'm worried about some of those guys in year 5 and year 6, I think that we have to talk about Alexander Mattison, Tony Pollard, Darrington Evans is one of my absolute favorite sleepers, because, like I said, I think that the cliff is near, if it's not already here, for Derrick Henry. I think that this is a season. He's been very lucky to avoid injury. He's been very durable throughout his career. I think that luck runs out in 2021. I think you're going to see him miss some time, and I think that when he does, Darrington Evans is going to be the feature back. So, some guys like that. Those are some second and third wave guys I would look at. All right, TNT says, will Marquez Callaway be relevant this year, even after Michael Thomas returns from injury? What is your outlook for him and Jameis? Yes, I love Marquez Callaway, man. I think that he's absolutely – I like Traquan Smith quite a bit too, but I think Marquez Callaway has kind of become the guy that, first of all, I think that he's going to own that wide receiver 1 job. I think that he's got Jameis Winston's attention, and he's not going to lose it anytime soon. I also think that this could be the type of thing where, if Michael Thomas takes too long to come back, and I think that he's probably, at this point, he's probably looking to rush back from that injury. But we've heard the possibility of him missing most of the season, 2/3 of the season to 3/4 of the season with this injury, because the surgery took place so late in the off season. if this could be the type of thing where, it already feels like the Saints and Michael Thomas might be headed for a divorce. Marquez Callaway kind of puts the Saints in a position to actually move on from Michael Thomas. I would have to look it up or ask my producer to look it up as far as what Michael Thomas's contract looks like and how easy they can get away from him. But I guess the bigger point is that Marquez Callaway gives them an opportunity to kind of build around another wide receiver and start to plan for a future without Michael Thomas. I think he's that good, and I think he's that important to their offense. And I think he's going to have enough time as the top guy in that offense that he's going to be able to make Michael Thomas possibly expendable. So that's how good I feel about him anyways. I think that's one of your breakout guys this year.
Yeah, so this year, Michael Thomas's cap number is $10,100,000, and so losing him this year, we're post June 1, it'd be $8.9 million in dead cap and 1.2 in cap savings this year. Yeah, if they wait until next year, he's owed a lot. He's owed $24.7 million next year, and so if they get rid of him pre-June, if they trade him pre-June 1, because I think he said he wants to be traded. Mm-hmm. If they trade him pre-June 1, they save about $2 million in cap.
And what's the dead cap?
The dead cap for next year in 22 would be 22.7.
Oh,
so they take a hit.
Yeah. So it would have to be a trade, and they would have to work out, the trade partner taking on a significant chunk of that contract. So we don't have any outs anytime soon, but it's still entirely possible that they move him in trade. But again, Marquez Callaway gives you some trade leverage. You're okay trading away Michael Thomas. You don't have to, but you can. So with Marquez Callaway post breakout, because this breakout is coming. Yeah. AJ, new to building SuperFlex Dynasty teams. Love QBX. Nice. Love it. Could you please share one of your recently drafted QBX teams to give an idea of what the rest of a contending roster looks like with QBX? Thanks. Yeah, I would. Let me see if I can pull one up. I'm not going to be able to put it on the screen, I don't think. I only did 2 startups this year, I believe. But yeah, let me get one of them for you here. There's
Take this time to plug. Sign up for the September ADP mock drafts.
Nice. That's how it's done. That's why you're here, man. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, okay. There we go. DLF Family, a podcast family squabble. Commissioned by Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse. Drafting against Peter Howard and Matt Price and the guys from Dynasty Builders and just a few of the contributors and writers and podcasters at DLF. That one was a lot of fun. It was tough. But so this quarterback extreme roster, I ended up with, right now I only have 4 quarterbacks. If I'm being honest. I'm still working on, so Peter Howard sniped me on Aaron Rodgers. He did it on purpose, and we haven't completed a trade yet. It's coming. It's going to happen. But in the meantime, I've got Jordan Love, and I don't have Aaron Rodgers. So to me, Jordan Love is not a quarterback. It's news to him, and it's not going to sit well with him. But he doesn't count as a quarterback because he's not an NFL starter. So my quarterbacks, my actual quarterbacks in that league, it's Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and Jameis Winston. And then, so I started off with Kyler Murray. I came back with Russell Wilson. And then I actually took Cam Akers is my running back one. So that team already took a little bit of a hit. We haven't had waivers yet, so I haven't been able to cut Le'Veon Bell and get somebody else. I already traded away Cam Akers. I got I think I got some future draft picks or something. Nothing too special, but so here's the running back group. I've got Le'Veon Bell. He's going to be my first cut. Devontae Booker, Mike Boone, Matt Breida. So, those are just kind of some of those second and third wave type of guys we were talking about. Damien Harris, Joe Mixon. Those are my two starters. Ronald Jones is going to be in that mix too. J.D. McKissick is a possible pass catcher at a flex position. I've got Jordan Howard, Mark Ingram, Latavius Murray, Benny Snell, Jamal Williams, Darrell Williams, and Ramondre Stevenson. So you can kind of see how that lines up, right? How it starts off with, that first wave is going to be Mixon, Damian Harris, Ronald Jones, most likely. Mark Ingram might be usable early in the season as a flex consideration. So it's going to be those guys. And then at least in theory, by that second wave, I think we're seeing more of Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe we're seeing, like I said, J.D. McKissick in the pass catcher role. Mike Boone, I still love Mike Boone. We haven't seen him in this preseason due to injury, but to me, it's him and Javonte Williams once he's back healthy. Melvin Gordon's kind of the odd man out there for me. And then once we start to see some injuries, you're looking at, Matt Breida, Devontae Booker, Latavius Murray, Benny Snell, Jamal Williams, Darrell Williams. So there's kind of a lot of guys there who could take on a massive role as long as, the opportunity presents itself. So that was kind of the goal. Above all else, I mean, that's just a bunch of running backs. That's what it takes. That's what we want to go for in that SuperFlex flywheel. Obviously the 5 quarterbacks, that's a big part of it too. But the people kind of focus on that. They focus on the 5 quarterbacks and miss the fact that in order to make the running backs relevant and keep the running backs supporting the quarterbacks, it takes a ton of them. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 running backs, 5 quarterbacks. And then the other thing that throws people off a little bit is the wide receivers. I go super lean at wide receiver. So I actually started off with CeeDee Lamb. I traded him away. That's how I got Joe Mixon. I got Joe Mixon and Robert Woods for CeeDee Lamb. So my wide receivers aren't going to thrill anybody, but they're going to have a nice, safe floor. You only have to start one. I've got Robert Woods, Jarvis Landry. One of those guys is my every week. Robert Woods, I'm just gonna rubber stamp him until his bye week, and I'm probably going with Jarvis Landry. And then a couple upside guys with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Nico Collins. That's all I've got at wide receiver. Because there's nothing to be gained by taking Robert Woods out of my lineup in favor of, really anybody else. They all have the exact same ceiling. Robert Woods has the same ceiling as Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf. I mean, any one of these guys can have that monster, 3 touchdown, 200 yard. They're all capable of having that game. Now, I mean, obviously Jefferson, Metcalf, they're more likely to actually have that game than Robert Woods is. But the bottom line is, Robert Woods is just as capable of that as they are. Where the real advantage in DK Metcalf or Tyreek Hill or Justin Jefferson or A.J. Brown, where the actual advantage with those guys is in their floor. But the floor, it's a difference of about 5 points. They're going to average somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 points a game. Robert Woods is going to average somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 points per game. And how often are they actually going to hit that? It's going to be the same amount, probably, plan on 8 games where you get 18 points from A.J. Brown or Justin Jefferson, and 8 games where you get, 13 points from Robert Woods. That's kind of what wide receivers do. There's not a whole lot of variance to that position. So there really isn't any reason for me to take Robert Woods out of my lineup at any point. He's got the same floor and he's got the same ceiling in every single matchup. And so if I'm not going to take him out of my lineup, why do I need a bunch of guys behind him? Why do I need depth? So again, I've got the upside guys with Nico Collins and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Maybe one of them breaks out to a point where I'm starting him over Robert Woods. But, it's not going to be a type of thing where, I'm starting Robert Woods plus one of those guys. There's just kind of no reason to do that. My quarterbacks are going to score enough. I want running backs in my flex spots. And then the other thing is tight ends. And it's a massive premium in this league. And so I've got Eric Ebron, Noah Fant, Austin Hooper, Irv Smith Jr., and then Foster Moreau, who's just another kind of dart throw. But I mean, I would rather throw darts at tight ends with that tight end premium than at wide receivers, So yeah, I mean, I'm looking at starting as many of those tight ends at flex as I can. As many of them are going to be viable as possible. So, I mean, to me, I'm just looking at these projections right now. Eric Ebron, Noah Fant, Austin Hooper are all projected to score over 12 points in week 1, just with this premium. So give me those guys at flex. So yeah, that's kind of the build. It's very heavy on quarterbacks. It's very heavy on running backs. Go super lean at wide receiver. And then, with a heavy tight end premium like this, I've got a good amount of depth at tight end. If we didn't have that premium, I would only have 2 tight ends. I wouldn't really care, who's starting for me. But I think it's a full point in this league. It's at least 3/4 of a point, if not a full point. So, it's worth chasing at that point. So, and like I said, I want those guys and I want running backs in my flex spots. So I don't want wide receivers with their low floor and low probability of getting to their ceiling. I don't want that in my lineup. Justin, keep, trade, cut. Teddy Bridgewater, Jameis Winston, Jared Goff. Let's definitely keep Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston has a chance. I mean, now that he won that job, I kind of think he's keeping it. I think he's keeping it. I mean, I think Taysom Hill's going to get on the field just like he always has. Jameis Winston has a chance here to be a long-term starter for the Saints. So definitely keeping him. I think I'm going to trade Teddy Bridgewater. We'll go back to, what we were saying earlier, just about the fact that right now his value is up. Drew Lock's is down, even though, I still think that you're going to see both of them this year. And I think that you're going to see just as much Drew Lock as Teddy Bridgewater. That's kind of my guess. It's going to take a little bit of time. And sometimes people have a hard time, looking beyond. That's kind of what we've been talking about here. Drafting for, those running back waves. People just look at week 1. People draft for week 1 and then they stop. They stop looking ahead. They stop thinking about like who are going to be the guys who are going to help me in week 5. Who are going to be the guys who help me in week 10, and really who's going to help me finish the job and get this fantasy championship in week 17. Who's going to be that guy? Who are going to be those guys? People don't think about that. They just think about what's the best lineup I can set for week 1. And it's like, I mean, you're like, what are you going to do the rest of the season? You got 2 great running backs. Cool. What happens when those 2 guys get hurt? How are you going to navigate the rest of this season? So yeah, people aren't really thinking ahead too much. All they're looking at is Teddy Bridgewater's a starter right now, and they're valuing him as such. So, I think that his value is probably a little bit too high for a guy who's not going to start the entire season, and in fact is going to be on a really pretty short leash. So yeah, I'll trade Teddy Bridgewater based on that, which means we're cutting Jared Goff. And I don't know. I don't love doing that, but I don't think that anybody believes that he's going to be a starter beyond 2021. Certainly not for Detroit. I think there are probably going to be some opportunities for him, in somewhere else. I mean, maybe Washington. Maybe Washington is looking for their next kind of a bridge type of guy. And maybe he settles into that type of role. Maybe he settles into kind of a bridge quarterback type of role, kind of like Andy Dalton apparently has, but yeah, I don't think that he has the trade value to really hang on to him over those 2 guys. And I think that even though he's an NFL starter and he should be worth a rookie first round pick, I kind of don't think you're going to get that anywhere for him. You should be able to, but I don't think you will. So yeah, he gets cut. I'm certainly not keeping him over Jameis Winston. Yeah, thanks for your questions, Justin. Always good to catch up with you, man. AJ, thanks for sharing your roster. Very helpful. Nice, man. Glad to hear it. Yeah. It's that roster build is not for everyone. And I've been kind of telling some people in DMs the last few days. I've had several people come to me and ask me about roster building. And I tell them about the flywheel and what that actually looks like. And they're like, man, it's intense. They're like, I hear what you're saying. Like, I understand like how that makes sense, but man, that feels intense. I would say like kind of wade into it, if it feels like too much. If it feels like too much to not have wide receiver depth and to have just a piss load of running backs. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the DLF channel. It happened and we don't edit. It's live. It's out there.
We're fine.
But you just want a bunch of running backs. And, it feels weird to people to have that many of them. And certainly quarterback extreme kind of throws people off. I would wade into it a little bit, try 3 to 4 quarterbacks, but go early. Go early after quarterbacks, get 3 or 4 of them, and just see how it feels, see how it looks when you're playing matchups like that, right? With that quarterback rotation, cherry picking matchups, see how it looks, see how it works. Also, look at what quarterback value looks like in your league, and then next year, you can try quarterback extreme all the way. You don't, maybe not necessarily go for the ratio that I have at running back to wide receiver. So I've got, what did I say, 15 running backs and 4 wide receivers. So we're a little bit over 3-1, almost 4-1. You don't have to go quite that extreme, maybe try 2-1, just see how it feels. So, Corey, how many leagues is too many leagues? So, that Mean Girls gif. The limit does not exist. What I will say is it gets tough, man. It gets tough to keep up. Definitely. But and I think that's part of where I came to the realization that because I've got a lot of leagues. Like I'm not going to sit here and count them for you right now. It would take too long. It'd be really boring. But I've got too many of them. Some of them are very good. Some of them are just okay. And there's a couple of them that are just total dumpster fires. Like I've got one that JD from the GOAT District started. 16-team SuperFlex, where I ended up with Jared Goff and Phillip Rivers as my 2 quarterbacks. Like that team, and I made the championship. It was a 3-team championship last year, and I got there. But now, I mean, Phillip Rivers is retired. Jared Goff, we just talked about him, and it wasn't a glowing review. Like that team's in big trouble. I've got good running backs with Antonio Gibson and Derrick Henry, and now I've got Joe Mixon coming back too. So I've got good running backs. I've got some decent wide receivers and tight ends. I've got Darren Waller at tight end and with a heavy premium. So there's some good stuff there, but without the quarterbacks, I feel like that team is horrible. And so that's where I kind of came up with the theory that you want to go all in on your own, on your strategies, on the things that on the things that you think, whatever it is, the things that make you the most confident and the most comfortable, go all in. Because, that team could be fine, but I don't have the quarterback depth to feel good about it. And therefore I'm managing that team like poop. I'm doing a horrible job with that team, and it's only going to get worse. If I lose Derrick Henry, like here I am saying, I think Derrick Henry might be at the cliff. I think he might be due to miss some time to injuries here in 2021. If that happens, I mean, that team is screwed. So why am I not doing something about it? If I'm sitting here telling all of you that that's how I feel about Derrick Henry, why am I not making any moves? Well, it's because I think that team's a lost cause anyways, because I don't have quarterbacks. So I just don't pay attention to it. I'm not doing enough. I don't camp on that roster long enough. I focus on the ones that are quarterback extreme, where I've got quarterback depth, and I'm going to be able to guide those to the playoffs. So that's the one thing that happens. And I hear you, Corey. It does get hard to say no to some of those invites. Like people come to you with a whole new, like a whole new format that you've never tried before. John Bosch comes up with a new way to freaking draft. You get stuff like that. I end up in that podcast league because it's my first chance to draft against Peter Howard. You end up with stuff like that. I ended up in drafting with Giants, run by Andy Singleton, because some of the people in that league actually requested me and wanted to play against me. Like, how do I say no to that? Whether you take it as a compliment or take it as a middle finger, either way, it's like, all right, I'm there. Like, that's really nice of you to say. You want to play against me? That's really nice of you to say. Oh, you think you can beat me? Okay, let's bring it on. Either way, I'm there, So you just end up adding those leagues, and then it gets really hard to keep up. And what you really notice is the teams that are built the way you want them to be built are the teams that you're going to manage the best. And those are going to be the teams that are the most competitive, So yeah, go all in on your best ideas. Go all in on your strategies. If it's not my strategy, that's fine. It doesn't have to be. But, whatever works the best for you, go all in on it, because that's the team that you're going to pay the most attention to. And the rest of them are just kind of on the periphery, and it makes us feel like, oh yeah, I've got room in my life for one more. So That's the other thing. I'm saving you people money. I'm giving you a way out of adding more leagues. Like let's build those rosters in a way that that we're gonna be heavily invested in managing it properly, and then we won't feel like we need more leagues. I don't know. At least it's a theory.
We like to draft. People like to draft. So
Yeah.
if you get the itch to join a league, find John Bosch, do one of his charity best ball leagues, have a blast.
Yeah.
And save yourself some time.
Yeah.
And give to a good cause all at the same time.
Right. There you go. AJ, 12-team SuperFlex PPR Dynasty startup. Nice. Took Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, CeeDee Lamb, Darren Waller, Zach Wilson, Baker Mayfield, Chase Claypool, in that order. In a build like this, if you like the quarterbacks on the board in rounds 8 and 9 versus other players, do you keep taking quarterbacks? So you've got Dak, Lawrence, Wilson, Baker. Yeah. You've got 4. Yeah, that's the thing. It starts with, the 4 or 5. It's really just kind of about giving yourself options, when it's time to set lineups. You want the ability to keep a quarterback as SuperFlex at all times, regardless of buys, regardless of injuries. The most likely scenario is you're going to have at least 2 quarterbacks available at all times if you've got 5 of them. Even if one of them's on bye and 2 of them are hurt, you still have 2, But even beyond that, it also gives you the ability to cherry pick matchups when everybody's available. You get to say, man, this guy's playing Houston, Zach Wilson's playing Houston, and Dak Prescott's playing Tampa Bay. So is that or Trevor Lawrence is the one playing Houston in week 1, and Dak Prescott literally is playing Tampa Bay. Like, you can avoid a big time landmine with Dak Prescott going up against a very good pass rush, coming off of that ankle injury, dealing with other injuries as well. All of a sudden, there's a chance that Dak Prescott, he still has the same floor. Like, we're still going to get double digits from him, but that might be a ceiling too in that game. His floor is probably around 10 points against Tampa Bay. His ceiling might be somewhere in the neighborhood of, 12 points, 15 points. Where Trevor Lawrence, he still has that floor. He's still going to be double digits. It's pretty easy for a quarterback to get double digits. That's basically 200 yards and a touchdown, something like that, to get double digits. They can sleepwalk to double digits. But Trevor Lawrence against Houston has, what's the ceiling? It's probably in the neighborhood of 40, 50 points. That's a rookie in his first start in the NFL. Still has a ceiling because that defense is going to be so bad. They lost all their pass rush. They don't have anything in the secondary anymore. They're not even trying. They're not trying to stop anyone. Trevor Lawrence has just, a 40-point ceiling pretty easily in week 1. And you want to be able to avoid those landmines, make those decisions and say, Dak Prescott is fine. I drafted him in the first round to be my stud quarterback, but you know what? This is just not his week. Let's get him out of there. We don't have to accept that 10-point game, 12-point game, whatever it ends up being. Get Trevor Lawrence in there. You get the same floor, but now all of a sudden you've got an extra 30 points, up to the ceiling. Like, that's the opportunity that we have. 30 points. You almost don't have to start your 2 wide receivers in order to win that week. If you get that extra 30 points from Trevor Lawrence, so if he gets to a ceiling of 40 points, you almost don't have to start any wide receivers and you're still going to win that week. That's how crazy it is. So that's kind of the point at first, but then it can shift a little bit. I still want to make sure that I've got I've got a rubber stamp starter at wide receiver. I want to make sure I'm chasing tight end premium if you have that. I want to make sure that I've got my numbers at running back. But if the rest of your league is still ignoring quarterbacks, all you do from there, first of all, you give yourself more options every week. If they're letting those quarterbacks fall to you, you actually do three things here. If you go quarterback in rounds 8 and 9, you give yourself more options. Every single week you've got that much more of an opportunity to get the quarterback one overall for that week, which again is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40-point ceiling. Do you find that? You also have a better opportunity to find the quarterback 2 overall. You increase your odds of that on a weekly basis. So you do that. You give yourself some very tradable assets. You have to take advantage of that quarterback trade value. We know how expensive it is to buy a quarterback after the draft. Outside of the startup. Think about what it takes to trade for a quarterback. And it's because you're the only one with the ability to do it. So you've got all the leverage in the world. You're going to get a ridiculous haul for a quarterback if you decide to trade one, and you don't have to, but if somebody's willing to pay that price, you can do it. The third thing you do is potentially set off a quarterback run in your draft where everybody's looking at you at your pick coming up and saying, there's no way he's going to take a quarterback, because he's already got 4 of them. And then when you do it, they're like, all right, he's going to keep taking quarterbacks forever. This guy's insane. He's going to keep drafting them. So I need to start taking this seriously. Set off a quarterback run, and all those running backs and wide receivers that were there for you in rounds 8 and 9 get pushed down to rounds 10 and 11. So yeah, to me, I would definitely do it, man. It's all benefit, very little risk. Dylan, would you rather start Justin Herbert at Washington or Trevor Lawrence at Houston week 1? I was leaning Lawrence for the matchup, but that Jags offense is looking like puke. I know it is. But you know what? I still think I would do it. I think that the path for the Chargers is probably going to be through the running game against Washington. That pass rush is vicious. And I think and the secondary is very underrated. So yeah, I think I still think that you have more upside with Trevor Lawrence. And above all else, I think it's a really good exercise, to be honest, in being willing to bench your first round pick, Justin Herbert, being willing to bench him for the upside that Lawrence gives you. Even if even if we get it wrong, I'll get a lot of these wrong this year. The thing is, being wrong at quarterback doesn't mean a whole lot. Like I said, they still all have that floor. They're still going to outscore most non-quarterbacks every single week. So, getting it wrong at quarterback is a much different thing than getting it wrong at running back. So, just kind of getting ourselves into that mode of making decisions, pulling the trigger, where you think that it's going to be a good, where you think it's a good matchup. You think this is the right play, not second guessing it. And certainly not falling back into the whole start your studs thing. That's what a lot of people will tell you. Like, you drafted him to be your starter, you got to start him. It's such crap, and it does take a little bit of work to program yourself against that, though. So I think it would be a great exercise to force yourself to go with Trevor Lawrence. And I do still think that you're giving yourself a little bit more ceiling if you do it. What is your outlook for Clyde Edwards-Helaire second-year breakout? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't see any reason why not. Here's the other thing that doesn't get talked about. I tweeted about this the other day, and man, I don't like saying it, but I've said before, I'm very narrative based in my analysis, very strategic, and a lot of that strategy comes off of narratives. We're talking about running backs and their cliff being somewhere in the neighborhood of X number of carries. That's it's really pretty anecdotal, and it's a narrative. There's a narrative there where Kansas City, and we're already kind of seeing it, that offensive line is getting destroyed here in the preseason. They're in a little trouble when it comes to the offensive line. But that post Super Bowl hangover, I know that people don't like to use kind of pseudo narratives like that. That type of talking point with no real, scientific basis to it, but it just happens all the time, and I think that if that were to happen, and it's either way, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire definitely is on course here for a breakout, but I think that post Super Bowl loss hangover, it creates even more of a path for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What tends to happen there, and we kind of saw it at times with a lot of the time with San Francisco last year, was just kind of an overall awkwardness in the offense. Just kind of like the passing game just isn't really working. We've got to come up with trick plays and stuff like that, and you really kind of lean on the running game. I know it's hard to imagine Kansas City. I know it's hard to imagine a world where the Kansas City Chiefs are taking the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hands because things aren't working. But, that's just the type of thing that happens every single year to the team that lost the Super Bowl. So, I just think that there's that much extra potency to the idea of a Clyde Edwards-Helaire breakout, just because I think that he might be the thing about that Chiefs offense that works the best. It's weird to say it when you've got not only Pat Mahomes, but Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. But, I just think that there's a scenario where that's the case. So either way, yeah, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a definite breakout candidate. But
we like to talk about second-year breakout and change in ADP. Mm-hmm. So I looked at Dynasty League Football's historical ADP from 2020.
Yeah.
And Clyde Edwards-Helaire was being taken as the running back 5 with an ADP of 6. And this year he's running back 13 with an ADP of 38. So there's definitely
the
values there.
Yeah. If nothing else, he doesn't, it doesn't even have to be a full on breakout to be worth it at that point, for that to hit, for you to get that return. So, he doesn't even have to break out, but I think that he will. And I think that there's more than enough opportunity for him. Corey, no Patreon on DLF. Yeah. I don't know about DLF. For me personally, first of all, if you're subscribing to DLF, and we appreciate it, means the world to us. But they pay me and you pay them. So we're good. We're good as far as that goes. Plus you get access to, all the tools that they have there. You get the rankings, you get the ADP. I think we've got the best ADP in the business. You've got my rankings. You can go off of the consensus rankings from all of our rankers. We've got, I think, 6 rankers, something like that. Or you can just isolate mine. You can isolate Ryan McDowell's or Peter Howard's or Matt Price's, however you want to do it. So yeah, that's the transaction side. I don't want to be a part of that. But just kind of on a personal note, I don't feel the need to ask for your money. I'm getting everything I want to get out of this. I'm having fun showing up on Friday nights, talking with my super friends. Got the Captain Redbeard, hanging out, get to talk with him, get to strategize and about how are we going to do this show and how can we make it better. That's all fun for me. That's the stuff that I like to do. I don't need money. I don't need the Patreon. I'm getting everything that I need out of this. I also, there's just, I mean, I'm not going to take a bunch of stands here. I'm not going to get all dramatic. I'm not going to get all political. There's been a lot going on Twitter lately and a lot of talk about how things should be done, how things should be talked about. And a lot of it amounts to, you should be doing what everybody else has done before you. And I don't subscribe to that even a single bit. Somebody already blazed the path. Somebody already said, beat down the trail from, podcasting, from writing to podcasting to video streams to Patreon. Somebody already did that. They beat me to it. I don't want to follow somebody else's path. I want my own path. And my own path led me here to SuperFlex SuperFriday nights. And like I said, I'm getting everything that I want out of it. I hope you are too. It's always a pleasure to get to talk SuperFlex with you, to strategize with you all of my super friends here. So thank you all for jumping in. And yeah, high five back, Corey, for sure. Yeah. A lot of fun, always a lot of fun. And I look forward to this every single week. I after a hard week of work, all I can think about is how much I want to get on here and talk SuperFlex with all of you. So I don't want to set up any barriers to that. I just want to keep showing up and talking with all of you. It's fun for me. Hope it's fun for you. I hope it's useful to you as well. That's pretty important to me. That we're talking about things that you can actually apply in your SuperFlex leagues and your one quarterback leagues. We talked a little one QB. We can do that. I have no problem doing that. So, but yeah, back to SuperFlex though. September ADP. We're going to start the mock drafts probably early next week. You can definitely watch for the tweet at SuperFlexDude. I'm going to tweet it out and we're going to fill as many mocks as we can, minimum of 4, but man, if I get 5, 6, 7, whatever, I'll do them all. Get as many of my super friends with your sharp SuperFlex minds as we can get in those drafts, in those mock drafts, the better the ADP is going to be. So I'd love to have every single one of you there, so we'll start that early next week. Feel free to hit me up now and say, yeah, I want in. But you can also, like I say, you can watch for the tweet. Either way, you can DM me, you can at me. And like I say, you can wait for the tweet. All I need is your email address and your Twitter handle, and I'll get you in. Nice. Appreciate it, Corey. Oh man, we've got another one from Dylan, and I was just about to sign off, but I want to talk a little bit more QBX. I saw QBX there and was just like, oh, let's do it. I'll keep going. I'll keep talking QBX till the end of time. What's the QBX strategy for quarterbacks in a SuperFlex rookie draft? For example, should Lawrence, Lance, Fields, Wilson, and Mac Jones have been the top 5 rookie picks this season? No, I don't think so. Not necessarily. That's part of the beauty of doing it in the startup. If you have 5 quarterbacks, you went quarterback extreme in the startup and still somehow ended up with 101. Maybe you traded into it. Maybe you earned it because you went, 5 straight quarterbacks in the startup last year and had a productive struggle season. You ended up earning 101. You already have the 5 quarterbacks that you need. So, yeah, I don't think that you had to go Trevor Lawrence at all. I think, to me, the rookie draft is for running backs above all else. Now, it was nice that we did have a pretty deep quarterback class this year. That was nice for anywhere where we needed to reload. Again, there were some leagues where I had Phillip Rivers. There were some leagues where I had, Drew Lock, Gardner Minshew. So there were some spots where I ended up, I went from 5 quarterbacks down to, 3, 4, some of them even farther than that. And I really don't want to have to pay to increase my head count by trading. So it was great that we had a class here where you were able to, even if you're drafting kind of, in the mid-late first round of your rookie draft, you were still able to get Mac Jones and increase your quarterback head count. That was awesome. That was a gift, but for me, ultimately, what I really would like to do is have those 5 quarterbacks already set so that I can use the rookie draft for running backs. Because where we say, quarterbacks are always the cheapest in the startup, running backs are always cheapest in the rookie draft. Running backs are always the cheapest in the rookie draft. Najee Harris was going, he was going top 5, but now he's like a second or third round pick, in ADP based on where he landed and based on the fact that, it now in the startup, when we're looking at Najee Harris, there's kind of a lot of quarterbacks still to choose from. So people are taking him at a much higher value than what he was in the rookie draft. And that's always been the case at running back. You always get them the cheapest because once they, once you get past the rookie draft, they get on the field, they break out, you're not getting them. You're not touching them. Not for a reasonable price anymore. So, yeah, for me, the strategy is get the quarterbacks in the startup, use the rookie drafts to load up on running backs. And that's where you can get some stud running backs. You can get Najee Harris, relatively cheap before his, monster rookie campaign. So, yeah, that's how I would do it. That's how I like to strategize it. Yeah. Extremely useful shows, John, to get the strategy overviews. Nice. That's what we want. I'm very rarely going to have numbers for you, but I love talking strategy. And like I said, to me, the names don't matter if you've got the right roster build, if you've got the right strategy. So, yeah, that's what SuperFlex SuperFridays is always going to be all about, is a strategy to help you go get those championships, help you take it down. So, again, thank you all for joining. So much fun. Really appreciate all your questions and just for joining and taking part in the discussion. We'll do it again next week. And until then, stay sexy and super flexy.